from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. I'm here with you, Marianela Nunez, and here with my friend, Mike Walsh. How are you today?
I'm well, Marianela. I'm very well, as a matter of fact. We're recording this on the Thursday before this episode goes out, and it's a gorgeous, what yesterday ended up being a gorgeous day outside. It made me very happy. Today was rainy all day, and that also made me very happy. I didn't have any damage from the hurricanes that came through, so I felt very blessed.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. This week has been one of those typical August up and down weeks.
Wow.
So, but I'm pleased, and I'm actually I'm trying to take off on Fridays to get a little vacation time in, of which
You deserve it.
I'd like to think so. Of course, there's no place to go and there's nothing to do, but I have enjoyed being at my house and puttering, so I guess that's a step in the right direction.
Well, I think after working tirelessly with the pandemic work you did, I think you certainly deserve these Fridays.
In my defense, I don't know if it was tirelessly. I felt pretty tired throughout the entirety of it, but it was it was definitely a lot of work. But that's sort of my goal is. Every year I've worked for the diocese, I've forgotten that the only real time, the lull in my year is July and August. Except, of course, for this year, because of the subject we're going to be coming up in a few moments about. So I am trying to take as much time as I can, even though there's no place to go and nothing to do. And I'm not bitter about that. I'm a little bitter
You're
about it.
baking a lot, I see.
Yes, I have. Oh, man. For anyone who knows where my Instagram account is, I took a look at the last 15 photos I had posted, and 10 of them were baked goods that I've made, and I'm happy to say they were all delicious. I've only had one failed baked good. I attempted to make the Japanese jiggly cheesecake. If you follow tasty.com, which is an Instagram account that I like to follow. I follow a lot of baking accounts. There's this fascinating Japanese cheesecake that's this big, fluffy, almost kind of like a enormous pancake, but it's a cheesecake. Anyway, it looks amazing, and I figured I can make that happen. Turns out I cannot. I have not learned Japanese cuisine quite yet.
Don't give up. It's,
Oh, no, I'm going back to it again
Continue.
at some point. Yeah. I've had a really good string. I think it's time to, and that actually has been something I've been doing, has been going back to all my failed bakes from years and years past and trying to improve on them. So I'm like everybody else during the quarantine times. I'm doing a lot of baking and enjoying it and putting on a few pounds because of it, which I'm perfectly content with.
That's funny.
Yeah. How's your time been?
It's been great. Just enjoying time with the family after work, and working a lot in the school's office. And sort of like happy to be making this podcast today where we will be talking a lot about, reopening Catholic schools.
Yeah, it's the topic of the day. Really, any place you go is, particularly this time of year, is how are schools, both public and private, going to reopen? We certainly in the previous several months we had podcasts where we talked to a lot of teachers and administrators about what it was like, going through that lockdown period. But now we've had an entire summer to prep for it, so we decided to bring on a couple of our own experts to discuss it. So who's with us today, Marianela?
So we have today with us Dr. Bill Watson, who is the superintendent of our school's office. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks, Marianela. It's great to be here.
And we also have with us Mary Beth Peabody, who is the Marketing and Communications Manager for the Office of Catholic Schools. Welcome, Mary Beth.
Thank you, and welcome to you, too.
Thanks.
And for once...
Thank you for including me.
Sure. And just for if anyone's noticing a sound difference, three of us are in the same room, and Mary Beth is zooming in, so her sound will sound a little bit different, but that's why. It's one of the rare. I've only done this twice, where we've had one person zoom into a live recording, so hopefully everything will sound good. But and if it doesn't, I'll do my best to fix it in post. But we definitely wanted to make sure we had Mary Beth as part of this conversation, because obviously these two have been doing a lot of the work in terms of planning and communicating how Catholic schools in South Jersey are going to be reopening. Yep. So Mary Beth, or Marianela rather, at the very beginning talked about me working tirelessly, and I'm fairly confident, Bill, you're the only person working harder than me in all of South Jersey, because we had 30 plus schools to plan for. That's got to be a Herculean task. So, let's start from the very beginning. When COVID crashed us down rather, and we all started working remotely immediately, what were the first things you started doing? Because we only had a few weeks of lead-up time to really think about it.
Sure. Well, one of the first things that I would say is that you cannot count out the principals of the 31 schools who are working every bit as hard as anybody in the Office of Catholic Schools and preparing those schools for to get ready. And that's really how we've approached this and how we approach things in March. One of our jobs at the Office of Catholic Schools is to set expectations, to provide schools with kind of some benchmarks, some things to aim for, and really also to provide a collaborative infrastructure for them to talk to each other. So Catholic schools they sort of operate as their own entities. So Catholic schools are independent largely, and our office provides the collaboration and the guidance that they seek. So one of the great things about that is that allows each one of the schools to do what is best for their school community. But at the same time, we come together to figure out what's best for everybody. So to go back to March, one of the first things that we did was actually very fortuitous. We had an in-person meeting planned for our principals, and that was about a week or so before we went into remote learning. Yeah. So we scrapped the agenda for that meeting, and we worked on remote learning. And I have to say, the principals, we provided, as we do, we provided a template, looked at what best practices in remote learning were, what other schools were doing, what our expectations were. And at the time, you remember that we were expected to be closed for 2 weeks of remote learning. So we were planning for 2 weeks. Yeah, right.
I remember that day.
So we were, planning kind of the immediate continuity of education thing. So we did that collaboratively. Again, we put forth the template. The principals worked together. Then we moved into the remote learning, and as time went on, we met we were kind of constantly on the phone with principals, and they got lots more email from me than I'm sure they wanted to or liked. But even
I would disagree.
More than usual.
If there's one thing we've heard about throughout the entirety of this, and this is just good best practices for other groups, the level of communication that was coming out of the Catholic Schools office is something that a lot of those school administrators really gave everyone a lot of kudos for, is that nobody was really operating in a vacuum. They had a resource to rely on, and you were doing a great job, and the office as an entirety was doing a great job of making sure that they were talking to people on a regular basis. And if I have any suggestions for anyone out in the professional world, make sure you keep those lines of communications open, particularly during crisis time, because I think you and the staff of the office deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thanks. Yeah, and we in addition to those individual conversations, we get together. We started that first Monday getting together with the elementary principals on Monday mornings at 11 o'clock, all of them through Zoom, and the high school presidents, principals, rectors, and everybody together on Wednesday mornings at 11 o'clock. And we continue that practice to this day, and there's no end in sight. Yeah. So that's actually been one of the really great markers for us. It kind of holds everybody accountable to the things that we need to do for planning and implementation, because we know we're going to be checking in with each other. And it also gives a really nice infrastructure for the collaboration with each other. So that's a great opportunity for them to hear what everybody else is doing. It's not the only opportunity they have for that. Obviously, principals are collaborating. They don't need us for that to call somebody. They don't have to go through our switchboard or something like that. But we really are the convener for those groups of principals, and that's really where some of the best ideas come from.
Yeah.
And they love it, I think, because it's so hard during these times of COVID-19, to feel isolated when you're working and sort of being responsible for so many people. So I think our office provides that level of support that the principals need to work in collaboration with our office, with the fellow principals, so that we can have and make the best decisions that we need to make for the better of the children that attend our schools and the families as well.
So, I would have to say you put out I could ask this question. As we got to the end of the school year, in addition to doing a good job of putting out a lot of good information, you've done a good job of asking a lot of questions. And one of the things you did when the school year ended was put out a survey. It was a fairly, I wouldn't call it an intense survey. I think it was fairly easy to respond to, but you asked a lot of very direct questions about the quality that the people saw during that remote learning process of the last 3 months of the school year. Can you give us an idea of what some of those questions were and what kind of feedback, overall you got from the questionnaire?
Sure. It was lengthy, and one of the things that I'm very appreciative for is the level of response that we got to it. We had over 3,000 responses, and that is really an incredible response rate considering all of the schools that we have, and that parents have multiple children in different schools and different grades in schools. So that really represents a huge part of our student body. So there were really two sections. The first section was tell us about the last 3 months. And what did we do that was strong that we should keep doing if ever we're in that position again? What are those areas where we can improve if we're in those positions again? And then the second half of the survey was looking forward to next year. What are your thoughts? So, kind of thinking about the first part of that, one of the things that we heard from parents, and again, in 3,000 people, you have a real range of perspectives, but I would say one of the trends or the patterns was parents, by and large, were very complimentary of the work that our principals and teachers did in remote learning. So one of the things that we asked was, how satisfied were you with it, or how did it compare? And one of the things that I remember is that most of the people said that compared to any other school that they knew about, their school did as well or better.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought that was a fair question to ask. I mean, sort of from canon law, we are required to be at least as good as any other option for parents, and so knowing that we are at least as good, but I think, but I would say, a fair amount of people said we were better, and they were particularly. One of the things that I noticed was when the thing that parents were most complimentary of and that they wanted more of, should we be in a remote learning situation again, is teacher time.
Yeah.
They were very interested in the small group teacher time, live teacher time, and one of the interesting things, we mentioned before about how we were kind of preparing for 2 weeks. As it became clearer that we were going to be in this remote learning situation, for longer, I'm really impressed with the way that principals and teachers evolved their approach. So they began with more asynchronous kinds of things, things that you could do on your own time.
Yeah.
Educational websites, videos, practice exercises, and that kind of thing. Writing assignments. But what ended up happening over time was there was more and more of that live teacher contact. And to be fair, that varied, depending on the age of the kids and the school and that sort of thing. But that was one of the things that really kind of jumped out as something that was appreciated and something that, should we be in that position, that the parents would like to see again. And so very complimentary of our schools for making that adaptation. And now, as we look forward to next year, we're putting ourselves in a position to be able to deliver on that need should the occasion arise.
Right. Now, what the other thing we saw out of this survey was that there is a strong preference to be back into schools. Even though everybody wants us to be safe, and people seem to be very understanding of the world that we now currently live in a COVID world, and that there are risks in everything that we're to do, but that if we take proper precautions, there things can be done where we can come together. So with the idea of schools opening fully in the fall, and the assumption right now is that we'll be allowed to do that, but the truth of the matter is, as of the date of this recording, which is Thursday, August 6th, we haven't heard anything particularly definitive from the New Jersey State Department of Education or the governor regarding this. So this may all get blown up in the next couple of days.
Hopefully
and
not.
recorded. But even if that happens, this is our plan going forward. So can you give us some idea of what you and the principals and the office staff were really looking at with the idea of the possibility of reopening full time?
Sure. Yeah. So the first thing I would say is we really started locking in on the idea of opening our schools full time when we heard from parents on that survey. So we asked the question, which of the following options are
appealing.
Are appealing to you? Thank you. And it wasn't a ranking. It wasn't you could only they all could be appealing to a person if they if maybe, and some people did respond that way.
Yeah.
They were sort of open to wherever we went. So the 75% of the parents who responded said that the one of the back in school 5 days a week options was preferable, was appealing. So and the hybrid options, which you hear a lot about, were all below 50%. And the remote learning only option was around 10%. And so we still kind of see that. There is and parents have a lot of reasons for wanting to be remote. So we saw that, and we saw that there would always be a demand for remote learning. But if we had to make a decision between really trying to be back in school full time and being on a hybrid schedule, we should try for full. We should aim for full time if we could do it safely.
Yeah.
And that was always our intent. We want students to have the opportunity to be in school full time if they can do it safely.
And there's reasoning behind that too. I mean, it's not just to have butts and seats. It is there's a benefit to being in school, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we I think certainly we believe that. We're educators, right? So, but I think there's lots of reasons why that's true. And I think that the parents told us that was their preference, communicates to us that there's a lot of truth in that we're in agreement about in the Catholic school community. One of the things that we believe is that Catholic schools are Christian communities, and those Christian communities work best when we are together. Mm-hmm. Again, if we can be together safely, and so that's part of what is very consistent with the feedback that we got from parents. Another is that just academically, even if the school did nothing else but academics, which we do much more than that, but just looking at academically, one of the things that we learned was that for some students, remote learning or in-person learning is almost interchangeable from an academic standpoint. For some students, they struggled a little bit more to keep up with remote learning, and for others, they really were not able to keep up as well. And that has to do with a lot of things. Maybe it's the environment at home. Maybe it's the resources they have at home. Maybe it's their own particular learning progression and their needs as a learner. So academically, it really benefits kids to be in school with their teachers, where you can have that dialogue, the whole class kind of discussion. Which again, if we need to be remote, we can do, but we believe it's better in person.
Yeah.
There are also social benefits to it, and I think that many parents who have said, and this is more anecdotal, but that their children kind of crave those interactions with others, and that's whether you're in middle school, where you're a social animal, so to speak, and everybody knows that, or high school, or even into the primary grades. I mean, we are social learners. I mean, that's that's part of the human DNA, if you will. And we learn best with each other. And we, as Catholics, believe that we are called to live in community, and those communities are better in person. So if we can bring the communities together in person, there's benefits socially, there's benefits academically, there are benefits emotionally. I think, again, particularly, you hear from parents and, that children really kind of suffered with this idea of isolation. And we're in a place now where some kids are playing sports. They're able to get out and, be with other people in socially. And so school being a social environment, I think, is an important part of that. The way kids learn and their emotional needs, and so that's very, very important to us as well.
So that is really the impetus of us getting back. So then the real question, that's the natural follow up to that, and it's a thing you've already mentioned several times in the conversation, is how do we do it safely? And you've been looking into two things: the logistics of safety and the statistics of safety.
A lot of research.
Yeah, a lot of research. And actually, I've been doing a lot of it as well, sort of more globally than you have. I follow a lot of Twitter accounts specifically dedicated to tracking the pandemic. So when you roll out a lot of the stats you've rolled out to me recently, I go, yeah, I've seen that one before. That makes perfect sense. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it logistically first, because this is something that really each school had to do with guidance from us and the state and health officials, but realizing that each building is different than every other building in the diocese. So logistically, what have the schools been looking at?
So the first thing that I would say, and Mike, you mentioned it, but I do think it bears repeating, is that we said in the beginning we wanted to go back if we could do it safely, and we do believe we can. So we are following the guidance that it has been put forth by the Centers for Disease Control, and that's, if you just sort of Google CDC school guidance, anybody can look it up and read it. Right. Although we'll talk about some of the specifics. Not trying to get out of that.
No.
And also the New Jersey Department of Education put forward guidelines. It was a 104-page document that was sort of eagerly anticipated. And everything that we're doing is within the guidelines that are in that guide. We are also working in collaboration and communication with the departments of health at the county level. So the county departments of health actually are really involved in this pandemic, and so they're the ones where the contact tracing goes through, and they're the ones who are the immediate resource for any of us, really, but certainly for schools. And they've been very helpful in providing guidelines, and they want to make sure that they're the health department, right? They want to make sure everybody's healthy. Yeah. So that's the first thing that I would say, is that's everything that we're doing. We're doing in the context of those guidelines. We even looked at the World Health Organization guidelines, right? So really looking, literally globally, at how do we make sure that our students, our teachers, our families, our school communities are as safe as they can be. I don't want to boil things down. I don't want to oversimplify, but I also don't want to get caught in the weeds, right? Because there's so much. So I'll sort of start with the really big picture, which is wear your mask, keep your distance, and wash things.
I think I've heard that once or twice in the last couple of months. Okay.
And it's so true. I think one of the things, again, as Catholic communities, is we believe that we are in community with each other, and we are responsible to each other. And so that's really the idea behind the mask. Yeah. The cloth face mask, which will be required in all schools for students and teachers, is a way for us to collectively protect each other. I wear my mask so that I can protect you. Yeah. I may be an asymptomatic carrier of the virus, and because I'm asymptomatic, not know. If I'm wearing my mask, then I'm protecting you. And if you're wearing your mask, you're protecting me. So we do that collaboratively. And one of the things that we've heard about masks is questions about it. Will kids keep them on? Or will they take them off, and that, or will they? Are they going to be able to do it? And I have a lot of confidence in kids, and so I'm a little optimistic, but I'm also somewhere between an optimist and a realist. So we recognize that it may be challenging for kids, but we also recognize the strength of our teachers in communicating at an appropriate grade level to the kids what I've just said to you. Mm-hmm. This idea of our responsibility to each other. From a discipline standpoint, if I may, one of the hallmarks of Catholic schools is discipline, and we mean that in the way people have an image of what Catholic school discipline looks like, but when we
so
talk,
you're saying not a rule,
not a rule.
Okay.
No, that's we're not bringing those back. When we talk about Catholic school discipline, we really talk about the self-discipline, or the idea of truly being a disciple. And what does that mean is learning and following and developing a self-discipline. And so we have cultures that have discipline built in. And so the idea of, even thinking the mask is optional, it's sort of like if you have a tie as part of your school uniform, you don't take that off.
That's right.
We can certainly integrate wearing the mask with, do what Jesus would do kind of thing, is protecting everybody. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that level of cooperation. Again, I'm not going to say every child. I mean, do you have discipline problems in a school? Sure, you do. But I also know that we are. There will be opportunities. One of the strategies, another strategy that our schools are doing is planning for outdoor activities a lot more. Certainly recess will continue, and in many cases be a little bit longer. All schools are continuing to have physical education, and those will be outside. One school has announced to its parents that rain or shine or snow, your child will be outdoors for at least an hour a day, in addition to whether or not they have PE. So some schools are planning to have school lunch outside. So that's one way that we can incorporate a meaningful number one, different kinds of activities.
There's cool activities coming up, actually, that would excite kids. So
yeah, absolutely. It's sort of part of that, and also gives you, again, because those are situations in which you can be more than 6 feet away from others at all times, and remove your mask to sort of get a literal breather, that sort of thing. So that's one of them, and sort of mentioned there as well, getting outside. Another is that the second one on that list is social distance. So. The key benchmark that we do see in the New Jersey guidelines and in the CDC guidelines is 6 feet. That's been we're all very familiar with that. One of the things that's in both sets of guidelines, though, that that is striking, and I think again realistic, is in those occasions or those instances where you are not or are not able to maintain a 6 foot distance, there are other things you can do. Primarily wear your mask. But in all cases, in classrooms, students will be more than 3 feet apart. Some cases more than 6, and 3 was our lower bound on that, because that's the recommendation as the social distancing recommendation by the World Health Organization. And so where the CDC and the New Jersey guidelines come in and say it's ideal for you to be 6 feet apart, they do not mandate or require 6 feet apart at all times. But what they say is, if you're less than 6, be as far apart as you can and put some other things in place. Okay. So we do have masks, and we will have in those cases where, say, desks are maybe 5 feet apart from each other. This word that has become a part of my vocabulary that I never thought would, the sneeze guard.
Sneeze guard.
So we're familiar with these if you've been to the...
Can you describe it, Bill?
Sure. I'm happy to. I know all about sneeze guards, and our principals are
well-versed in that,
sneeze guards. So of lots of different types. So, you're familiar with these. You go to the grocery store, you go to the drugstore, there are these... clear barriers between you and, say, the cashier, right? So they're an added layer of protection there. You and the cashier are both wearing a mask, but there's this added layer of protection that kind of protects us from any sort of spread of the virus. So in classrooms, the sneeze guards that we're using are three-sided, right? So imagine on the top of a desk, you've got you have the one that you're sort of facing, and then you have two on your sides. And so this provides an added layer of protection should anything, should you need it, let's say.
Should a student sneeze.
Should a student sneeze. It also provides an added layer of protection. And, let's face it, you and I have been, in situations where we've been wearing masks for a long time, hours at a time. If you needed to just sort of unhook the left ear, take a few deep breaths and put it back on, I mean, that's just humane. But I think it also provides that added layer of protection under those circumstances.
Yeah.
So those are present, and that's a really important part of the risk mitigation strategy, if you will, the way that we're trying to keep kids safe, and which is, again, within the guidelines that we're following, and provides us with options.
Yeah.
The third thing that I would say that schools are doing is, and that individuals will be doing, is washing things. So that starts with yourself. So just like everybody else, I'm sure anybody listening to this is far more conscious of washing their hands for 20 seconds, singing happy birthday, or you're praying the Hail Mary is a good one. You could do that twice, and that's depending on how fast you pray it, 20 seconds. And then also hand sanitizer. So we have hand sanitizer stations throughout our schools. We also have sort of breaks worked in, and again, from an age-appropriate standpoint, right? So your kindergarten teachers and first grade teachers, that's a teaching opportunity for them. To teach about proper hand washing and why we need to use hand sanitizer. The other thing we're washing the desks. Students take responsibility. That's another thing that we do in Catholic schools is students take responsibility for their things. So we're not sharing things nearly as much as we are. Those things that do get shared get wiped down with disinfectant. Desks get wiped down with disinfectant on a fairly regular basis within the school day. Everything is cleaned and disinfected at the end of the day. Many of the schools have introduced disinfectant foggers, where
vaporizers too.
Yes, and as well as UV lighting in some places. So those are additional cleaning measures. And again, as you mentioned, each school is able to do what needs to be done and what is best for their school and their community. So the schools all have a task force made up of parents, made up of community members, teachers, and so they're looking at the different options for keeping the school clean, and there are options, and keeping the school safe for kids and healthy, safe so that the kids stay healthy, and they are choosing carefully within the needs of their community what's best. And that's so important for the Catholic schools because they're not making decisions for 5 schools at a time. They're not making decisions. I mean, we're putting parameters on it, and we're their counsel, so to speak. They come to us and they say, "Does this meet the need?" And we're pretty stringent. We're very stringent, as a matter of fact, because we're talking about the health and the safety of our communities. But where they're making those decisions, they're making them for their school community, and that's so important because they have latitude. And they're nimble to respond to things that happen in schools, and they're able to do that. So those are sort of the three biggies. There are other things. Daily temperature checks when they come into the building, temperature checks at home to sort of so that the daily temperature check when you come into the building goes well. Making sure, really asking parents to be vigilant about keeping kids home if they're not feeling well, and then there is a very detailed protocol for if somebody shows symptoms of COVID-19 in school, what happens if somebody has a family member who needs to be quarantined, or who has COVID-19, and that therefore they need to be quarantined. What do we do under those circumstances? Who do we contact? How do we let people know? If a student or teacher were to get COVID-19, we have strict protocols for communication with the class, for quarantine and isolation of the individual, and then in those cases we are hand in hand with the health department, because they have given us decision trees that are based on research, based on the ongoing research as we learn more and more on who should do what, and what kind of communication is necessary to the school community that is informative but also protects the privacy of individuals. So there are very detailed protocols for that in every school opening plan.
So the thing that's kind of impressed me, so you and I have been working together a lot on this for the last 2 months or so, probably farther back than that. But this is, there has really been no stone not turned over. We've looked into every possibility. We've looked into every circumstance, and with the realization that we can't predict everything that's happened. So earlier this week, both you and I saw this image from a high school in Georgia, where we saw that it was a high school. The kids were passing each other in the hallways. It was a photograph. Nobody was wearing masks, and everybody was tightly packed together. What we know that we are able to say is that is not an image that will show up in any of our Catholic schools, simply because of the level of discipline and the level of guidelines and level of rules that are in our schools, right?
Yes, and that photograph, I am confident is horrifying to our principals and to our teachers, and for that matter to our school families. And that's where I would say that's where my confidence comes from. So it comes from the fact that there is mutual agreement across everybody, and I would even say from the students. Again, there's a different approach that a 16-year-old, sophomore or junior in high school, is going to, a different way that they're going to be vigilant about that than a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old in, first or second grade. But I would say that commitment to each other, and Catholic schools are schools of choice. And we give parents choices, right? So for example, in number one, it's a choice to choose a Catholic school to begin with. Number two, and we haven't talked about this, the remote option that will be available to families who are not yet ready to send their kids back to school. But they are families where parents are invested. Schools where parents are invested. They're schools where the teachers and the principals are there because of the mission. And I absolutely believe that mission begins with love. Yeah. And I've told this to the parents, and the teachers know it, the parents know it, the principals know it. The first thing you must do is love the children. And when you love the children, that just sets the tone for everything. So that image, I am confident, will not be an image that will arise in the South Jersey Catholic schools. And I can say also with confidence, if something unexpected happens, and that does, there will be consequences for that school, and for those who are involved in whatever that is. And I don't mean that to sound punitive, but I mean it because it violates that covenant of love. It violates the responsibilities that we have to each other. And we have those responsibilities to each other so we can enjoy these communities in which that we are choosing to be in, but also to go back to the beginning of our conversation, so that we can have students can benefit from all of the things that Catholic schools offer. Not least of which is academics, but the social benefits, the emotional benefits. Hey, if you want to be here, if you want this to be part of your life, you got to hold up your end of the deal. Yeah. And our students know that. They've always known it, and this is just another way, I think, for them to demonstrate that they're holding up their end of the deal. And when I say there's consequences, then we have to go in and we have to make sure, what's happening here, that people are, students, whomever, are not ready to hold up their end of the deal, or not staying committed to that, and we need to address it, and we absolutely will.
So Mary Beth, I wanted to bring you in because you've had sort of an interesting perspective on this. You've been helping out our reporters at the Catholic Star Herald do some interviews with a number of the different schools in the diocese, sort of talking to them about their plans and, how they plan to, what they expect to do to open up their schools in September. So I just kind of wanted you to give sort of an idea of what, as you've been out in the schools, what you've seen in the conversations you've had with teachers. Has anything sort of like really impressed you with what you've seen so far?
Well, one of the things that's really impressed me is the collaboration among our leaders. I mean, it has been profound. As Bill said, we have calls during the week. There's the big group call with all the principals, and then on Wednesdays, we have a call with the high school leaders, and then a subgroup of the elementary school leaders who sort of were the initial task force. And then within each of those were broken down into smaller groups. And the way that they rely on each other is, they are completely focused on their own schools and their own communities, but the sharing and exchanging of ideas, it's been really, really neat to watch that grow. I think we've always had that, but it has definitely come to a new level. And they just, they really build each other up, and they're ready. They're ready. I mean, they have worked so hard.
Yeah. And, one of the things we haven't talked about a little bit is one of the benefits of Catholic schools in this regard, and maybe the example of that Georgia school we were talking about, because our Catholic schools are naturally a little smaller, we have the ability to have social distancing in our schools that a lot of these public schools would never be able to do, where they have to be looking at part-time and hybrid because they simply can't spread out, right?
That was actually, I was going to ask you the same question, Bill. Like, what would you tell to parents that are thinking, well, maybe a hybrid option is better for our family, for our kids? Maybe it's safer. Is it safer? And how do you think, we as Catholic schools are going to be able to have children 5 days a week? How is that?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the factors that Mike mentioned was size. So that's both class size and room size. And again, we're dealing with 31 different environments, right? So 31 different sort of microcosms of that interaction between class size and room size. So the first thing I would say is that Mike's right. So in some cases we have very large classrooms. In cases where we don't, we're spreading out to use the gym or the cafeteria and putting up temporary walls to have to
creativity.
spread kids out. Yeah, that's like Mary Beth said. The creativity is has been outstanding among the teachers, the principals, and sort of everybody involved. So when you think about and hear school opening plans from Catholic schools or from other types of schools, one of the things to remember is that everybody is responding to a different set of inputs. So we respond to transportation in some ways, but our transportation realities are different from the transportation realities of a school district. Another thing to think about is that a school district that has multiple schools has to sort of do the same thing in every school. So if you have, Washington School, Lincoln School, and Kennedy School has 100 kids, and you can get them 8 feet apart in every classroom, so they could be back under the same parameters that we've been talking about here, but Washington and Lincoln can't do that, then nobody can go back on that schedule in most cases, right? So they're sort of responding to that. Another piece is is budgetary, and I think it's let me just put it this way. I think public schools and Catholic schools respond to different budgetary pressures. So I think it's not necessarily. I think comparing apples to apples there, that like these two schools had the same choice to make, maybe, but they weren't responding to the same parameters. So that's important to remember. And again, to anybody who says, hey, wouldn't a hybrid situation be be better, I would say, again, look at those different choices, and I would also say we would not be offering 5 days in school for students if we did not think that it was safe. So I think a hybrid option would also be safe. I mean, these are two safe options as far as we're concerned, but we have done everything we can, again, within all of the guidelines that we've been provided and responding to the inputs and the realities of Catholic schools in our communities to make sure that we can open safely. And so, and the final thing I'd say on that, Marianella, is that we know that there are some families who are not yet ready to send their kids back. And we know that there are some students who are, maybe their health is compromised in some way. And so we have, from the very beginning, said that we are going to have a remote learning option for those families to choose. We ask them to discern it, to talk with the principal about it, and come to an agreement that that's where that's what they need for their children. And so, again, Catholic schools give parents choices. So we are a choice to attend to begin with, and we're providing the choice for that remote option for those families. And I would say, again, we talked a little bit about the feedback we got about last year. And one of the ways that we have adapted and are adapting for this year is to make sure that remote option is as close to the classroom environment as it can be, as live as it can be, as with the class as it can be. Again, because we're Catholic, we're communities, and we think that there's a lot of benefits to those. So I give an incredible amount of credit to our teachers, who are probably at this moment working through all the different ways to make that a reality. And they have they stepped up in the spring. They're stepping up now. They'll step up in the fall. And that, again, I think it all goes back to why we're in this. We're in this as a mission. We're in this because we love the children and the students and
the families
and the families, and we want to do right by all of those, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think our office really believes in supporting families in what they need, and having the children in school really provides that stability for us that are working. Like Mike is a parent, you are a parent of 5, I'm a parent of 2, and just knowing that we have school in person let us work normally as we need to. And we know that if there comes to a point where things get worse and we need to revise our plans, we will do that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things Mike mentioned before was logistics and statistics, and so I don't really want to go down the statistics road because Mike and I could spend a long time talking just statistics. But we are tracking various metrics to make sure that the conditions for being in school continue to be safe. And so, and again, we respond to a lot of inputs. We track our own metrics. Of course, we're attentive to executive orders that we are, where they include us and we're mandated to follow. And we are prepared if we need to say, hey, listen, we need to switch to remote option here for the safety and health of the kids. We're absolutely prepared to do that. And in fact, we've been prepared to do that from the beginning, not only because we did it, not only because we've been able to make adjustments based on parent feedback, but also because our model for implementing in the fall includes that presence in the classroom and sort of a remote presence for those students who will not be physically present in the classroom. And so that transition, really incorporating the technology every day, leveraging what we've learned, that transition I anticipate will be considerably easier this year if we have to make it than it was last year. And I think it will be, parents will see a difference in the way that the school day is structured. If we have to go to that option for everybody for some reason, they'll see a difference that we believe will be more like the school that they know and expect, and that will be beneficial for the kids.
And, this is something, we actually are doing this because we have some experience in this. When the diocesan offices opened in June, it opened with very severe guidelines of what even we're allowed to do in our very professional working space here. So the only time you're allowed to take your mask off is when you are at your own desk. If you go to somebody else's desk, you keep your mask on. Usually the people who work here also put their mask on when someone comes to their desk. We don't congregate together for any extended period of times or in close proximity of each other unless we're wearing our masks. When we're together, you and I were just in a big meeting yesterday, and we were all 6 feet apart while we had our masks on, sitting around the big conference table, very big conference table that we were able to get so many of us there, still 6 feet apart. And the truth of the matter is, in our situation here in the diocesan offices, we've now been open for 3 months, and we've been very healthy. There have been no outbreaks, no incidents, no nothing. So if you follow the parameters and if you follow the guidelines, and if the school accepts its responsibility in making sure that we are protecting the students, and if the parents and the students are accepting their responsibility of protecting the school and their classmates and their teachers by following these guidelines, we have every confidence that this will go smoothly. Is when people decide to go rogue or not listen to the guidelines, not listen to the statistics, our learned people, that we know where things will happen, which is why, as we talked about Catholic school uniforms at the very beginning, and as I sit here, as we're all around the table, and Dr. Watson is completely buttoned up, and my tie is down around my second button, and I'm slouching and not looking particularly good. There'll be if this tie were a mask and I was at school, this would be around my face right now, because you will not be able to get away with this. This won't be like your shirt tail hanging out underneath your school uniform, or for Catholic school girls rolling up their skirts. That mask isn't on, and you have a major problem.
Yeah, absolutely, and we sort of present it. That's just a reality, and it's not, it comes across as sounding kind of harsh, but it's needed. Again, we do the things we need to do so that we can have our community together for the benefits that the community brings to everybody, and so. I think it's a given that no matter where you are, no matter what school you're in, no matter whether you've chosen the remote option or the in-person option, the school's going to look and feel different this year. I mean, that's just a reality, and I think everything looks and feels different right now. But what won't be different, I think, is the community. And I have to say, the children, the students, and the teachers, and the parents make the community. The distance between the desks does not. The building does not. Itself, the mask does not. It's the people who are in the community, and I have great confidence that yes, it's going to be a little bit strange to look around and see your fourth grade classmates all wearing a mask. Although by this point they've probably seen it already.
I would hope so. Yeah.
But kids are so adaptable of any age, and we'll hit a stride, and I would say, just as you've said, when we hit that stride, we have to kind of keep our foot on the gas, so to speak. We have to remain vigilant about all of the protocols that we've put in place. But I would say, yeah, this school year is going to be different, but it will be what won't be different is the community and that sense of what Catholic school really brings and what the benefits of being there together are.
Mary Beth, I wanted to ask you for parents that are looking at schools right now and thinking, well, I need more information about the Catholic schools reopening plans, or maybe things that we have put out in our communications to the parents and to the community. Where can they find information, Mary Beth?
Probably the best place is on our Facebook page. We've actually we've done the communication that Bill has sent out to families is up there. We've had a question and answer guide up there. We have videos up there. Bill has made trips to some schools, and we've been able to put some videos from that there. Most of the print material that's on our Facebook page is also on our website. And then they could also call any of the schools directly and asked to speak to the principal or the advancement director at the schools. One other thing that I wanted to add about sort of what we've seen, and to continue with what it's going to look like. We did get out to some schools that have had some summer programs going on, and they've gone really well. The students are wearing masks. It's kind of been a good test run. They've had, some of the high schools have had, SAT programs, college planning. They've had summer school. And I spoke with a teacher from St. Vincent de Paul School in Mays Landing, and she said that it's actually been really relaxed and fun. The kids come in the morning, everybody gets their temperature taken. They do a quick screening, asking a few questions about exposure, how are you feeling today? And then they settle in and they get to work. And she said it's gone great. So that was really encouraging to me as well.
Well, that's great. Well, as we wrap up here, I would encourage everyone, if they have questions, to certainly go to southjerseycatholicschools.org or the South Jersey Catholic Schools website. Just type in South Jersey Catholic Schools. And certainly you can always check out the Diocese of Camden as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Bill, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It was a great chat as always.
Thank you.
And Mary Beth, thanks for co-hosting with me. And Mary Nell, thanks for co-hosting with me. And so many Marys in this office. And Mary Beth, thank you so much for joining us as well. And
Sure.
thank you to the listeners for checking us out. So have a great week, everybody.